Hi, I'm Tony from Symbolic Live, and in this video, I want to share with you the symbolic meaning of Spanish Steps, Rome, Italy. I visited the steps 1.5 years ago with my family, and during that trip, the steps really caught my attention. The different elements were communicating the symbolic meaning, but I couldn't put the pieces together until very recently. And then I realized that the steps really are an image of everything. I hope you will enjoy this video.
Before we discuss the steps' symbolic meaning, it is important to understand their basic history. It is a perfect showcase how symbolism happens in real life. The Spanish steps were built between 1723 and 1725. Their purpose was to connect the Trinità dei Monti church at the top with the Piazza di Spagna, Spanish square, on the bottom. The name Spanish Steps comes from the square's association with the Spanish embassy located in the square. The square is located near Porta del Popolo, which in the 18th century was the main entrance to Rome. Many inns were positioned near the square to cater to foreign travelers, and for this reason, the area became known as the Strangers' Quarter. At the square, you find Fontana della Barcaccia, which means fountain of the broken boat. It was built almost 100 years before the staircase in 1627-29. These two drawings from the 17th and 18th centuries show the area with the boat but no steps, and then the steps completed. According to a legend, Pope Urban VIII had the fountain installed after he had been impressed by a boat brought to the square by a flood of the Tiber River. Some say it is the fountain of the ugly boat, but actually it is in many ways the most beautiful of boats, and you will soon see why it is so. Now that we have covered the history, we will go through the different symbolic elements. There aren't many of them, but when they are combined, they communicate an amazing symbolic meaning. The different elements include the square, the boat, the steps, and the church on top. We also briefly look at the obelisk in front of the church. These elements form a pattern of reality. They become the building blocks of how attention creates meaning. Let's see how this happens. Think about the square as a sea. Especially in Christian symbolism, the sea symbolizes unpredictability, chaos, and death. This image is reinforced by the fact that on a busy day, the square is packed with tourists, becoming like a sea of people. When the square is completely empty of people, it is nothing but black cobblestone after cobblestone, until you see the boat and suddenly you have something where your attention fixates. Something meaningful has arisen from the sea of unrecognizable cobblestones. This is how attention and meaning work in real life. From the sea of million random facts, one pops out and gives you an anchor. From the sea of people, you suddenly recognize your friend, and instantly that person is not a random traveling stranger anymore, but one who has meaning to you. When your attention gives meaning to something, it immediately builds a hierarchy under it. This hierarchy of meaning is the steps here in the image, and the highest meaning is the church at the top. For example, the person you recognize out of a sea of people is made up of a head, hands, legs, and body. These parts can be further divided into different parts, which you can break down to the smallest of particles. This is not only true for people, but for everything that has meaning. It is true about space, it is true about time, it is true about material things like cars, communities like sports teams, thoughts like getting an A from an exam, or actions like making your bed in the morning. All these are anchors of attention that scale down to their parts, which gives you a kind of a map on how to get to the meaning or purpose on top. But they also stack up toward higher purposes. And this is beautifully represented in the Obelisco Sallustiano before the Trinità dei Monti church. The obelisk, in its basic structure, is the same image as the Spanish steps. This whole part under the peak of the obelisk is the quote-unquote body for the main purpose, what's on the top, which brings all the different parts into unity. At the peak of the Obelisco Sallustiano, there is the fleur-de-lis representing the French financing and political influence behind the obelisk and the steps. On top of the fleur-de-lis is the symbol of the church represented by the Pope's heraldic symbol. And on the very top, there is the symbol of the king who reigns over both the political and religious order, the cross of Jesus Christ. Before we wrap up, let's go back to the steps for the grand finale and see how the Spanish steps is truly an image of everything. We covered so far that the image reveals to you the pattern of reality. From the chaos on the bottom emerges meaning that is above. This happens every time we fix our attention on something, which is probably thousands of times every day. When we look at the Christian iconography, we see the same structure depicted in this famous icon of the ladder of divine ascent. Here, there is chaos on the bottom as this monster depicting hell. Here is the church, which is the anchor that emerges from the chaos, and the ladder from the church to the top, to the highest meaning. These two images are basically the same. In the Spanish steps, the chaos is the square with its sea of people. And you couldn't make this one up. The boat is brought to the square by an actual flood. The boat, which in Christian symbolism represent the church, emerges from the flood, which is literally chaos. After which a ladder is formed from the boat/church to the Trinità dei Monti church on top. This is a Catholic church whose architecture mimics the heavenly kingdom and anticipation of heaven, which in the icon is depicted here on the right top corner. So yes, these two images are basically the same. All this is marvelously depicted also in the icon of the Last Judgment. You can see different versions of this icon here, and they all have the same basic structure. The believers on the bottom, on the right side, looking from Jesus, who is at the top of the hierarchy, the believers are ascending toward him, who is the highest example, the ideal man for all people. Those who are not participating in the unity, on the left side from Jesus, are cast out to hell, which is chaos and meaninglessness. This judgment, by the way, happens in everything that has meaning. And notice that most of the time the judgment is not a moral one. Those parts that are not participating in the unity cease to be part of the unity. So, for example, if you are building a car that you can drive and you only have two wheels on it, it soon stops being a car that you can drive. Or if your purpose is to get an A from your next exam, but all you do is play video games, you are not participating in your purpose. You are moved away from that purpose. Notice also that the right side is not just good and the left is bad, because you see there are saints with halos on both sides of Jesus, right and left. This means that we need both unity and multiplicity. It becomes this dance between unity and multiplicity. Too much unity and you become too rigid and prideful, and too much multiplicity and you become too fragile and disintegrated. This is true in everything. Think about families or sports teams as an example. You need unity, but the individuals must be free to express themselves as well. That's why Jesus is here in the middle. He is the center where all unite. We see this amazingly depicted in the Spanish steps as well. The steps start at the bottom, go into the center and out of it, in and out, and in once more as they are united in the church on top. The designers of the steps knew exactly what they were doing. They could have built straight steps, but chose this curvy linear design for less steep steps, and because they wanted to construct an image of how reality works. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the symbolic meaning of the Spanish steps. Thanks for watching, and leave a comment if this changed the way you see the Spanish steps.